Okay. All right, everybody. So we're going to start just a few minutes after the hour. So this is our last presentation of the 2025-2026 academic year. And we're going out on a bang with a very eminent speaker. Very happy to have Dr. Schwaitzberg here to talk about AI, a hot topic, and its relevance and its impact upon surgery. So I'm going to try and summarize a very um, full career in 30 seconds, but Steve Schwaitzberg is a prominent academic surgeon, um, been a pioneer in the field of minimally invasive surgery. He's currently the chairman of the Department of Surgery at the University of Buffalo, the Jacobs School of Medicine, which, as you were saying, is all up the north of New York State, near to the border with Canada. He's been the chair there since 2015, and he's also the medical director of the surgical program, Clayton Health and Erie County Medical Center. Going back into history, he got his undergraduate degree from Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, in Maryland, and his medical degree further south at Baylor in Texas. He then trained as a resident at Baylor, did a pediatric fellowship pediatric trauma fellowship at Floating Hospital for Children. That's in Boston, I guess, right?
It is.
Great. Then he was the chief of surgery during Operation Desert Storm with the 365th Evacuation Hospital, which is probably a good topic for another lecture in the future. He's also been past president of SAGES, the Society of American Gastrointestinal and Endoscopic Surgeons. On the research front, he's been a principal investigator for some NIH grants, also grants from the Department of Defense, National Science Foundation, as well as some industry-sponsored trials. His research is focused on intra-abdominal adhesion formation, skill acquisition in minimally invasive surgery, surgical robotics, surgical outcomes. And he's done some interesting work looking at the feasibility of using microwaves to warm up blood for transfusions. Over his career, he's authored over 300 peer-reviewed manuscripts, many book chapters, videos, and he holds 3 US patents. He was inducted into the American College of Surgeons Academy of Master Surgeon Educators a few years ago in 2021, and he's received numerous awards such as the SUNY Distinguished Service Award, the American College of Surgeons Health Policy Scholar Award, and the Computer World National Smithsonian 21st Century Laureate Achievement Award. He's a fellow of the American College of Surgeons. He's also served on its board of governors, which is a great honor. And so we're very, very happy and we're very honored to have him talk to us today on the topic of AI as it relates to medicine and surgery. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Elliot, so much. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you can see it. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So all that means is that I'm old, and it's been, I've had the career of a lifetime. I am stepping down as chair after 21 years as chair in 2 institutions to pursue more research, more teaching, and do what I really love the most, which is doing surgery and not worry about some of the day-to-day stuff. So we're going to go on a tour. And one of the things that I find is that everybody's heard of AI and not as many people actually know what it is. And what I hope to have you think about is, I have no disclosures for this talk, is to understand the differences between computers and AI, which seems obvious to those of us who do a lot of work in it, but requires a little bit more thought. And then really think about the difference between intended and unintended consequences evolving technologies. If you want to read about it, I have an article in the Annals of Surgery that sort of summarizes, what the general concerns is. I am not an anti-AI person, but we have to be thoughtful. So big top line lesson is from very famous people like Winston Churchill, George Santayana. Those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And that's going to be one of our themes today. and hopefully everybody becomes a little more thoughtful. So what is AI? AI is an umbrella term. It doesn't mean any one thing. It includes robotics, machine learning, natural language processing, which is, Chat GPT, Claude, Grok, etc., computer vision, and expert systems. It covers a lot of territory. It is not a thing. It's many things. So the best thing to think of AI is as an artificial neural network. So what is that? So when we think about AI, with this, we've had AI for much longer than people realize. There's very narrow AI, there's general purpose AI, which is where we are today. There's general AI, which everybody says is coming soon, and the dreaded superintelligence, and we'll go through some of these things. So we've had a narrow AI for a long time. Your chess playing program, and these have been around for quite a while, is an example of narrow AI. Some people call it weak AI. For those of you that have an iPhone or an Android, the facial recognition is another form of AI. So you go, wow, that's been on my phone for many years. Yes, AI is not a new thing. The general purpose AI, which is sort of where we are at the state of the art, can do more things than unlock your iPhone. We can perform tasks such as image and speech recognition. We do a lot of work in our lab analyzing recordings and videos and answer questions. It can be trained. That's the fundamental difference between a computer program and an AI. AIs are trained, and we can chain these AI systems together, or they can be used as a standalone. And what we think of general purpose AI, GPAI, is, first Chat GPT, DALL-E, Sora, DeepSeek, Claude, Grok, Gemini, and the like. Big family. Whenever you have a new technology, somebody wants to monetize it. There are startups all over the world. I'm sure that somewhere somebody is working on an AI startup. If you look at top companies by patents, IBM, and this is a moving target, but there are thousands and thousands and thousands of patents that are moving, through this technology. So let's talk about artificial general intelligence, and we'll talk about superintelligence. When we think about superintelligence, we think of unlimited memory, speed, capacity for knowledge, omnipotent human-like creativity, and depending on who you talk to, we're there in 50 years, or we're there now, or we're there in 5 years. You see articles where, the doomsayers are out there. Super AI, humans risk being overrun by AI in 30 years. I think a lot of people think that might either is an underestimate, and the other side is, well, we'll never get there. But this is what we think of when we think of artificial superintelligence. So we're on this road. It starts with Siri and Alexa, and this is a very long and winding road. The road is truly long, and we're going to be at this probably for the rest of our collective lifetimes. So let's talk about ChatGPT. In a classroom of hundreds of people, and it's harder to do on Zoom, and I can't see you, I've asked this question over and over again. Raise your hand if you know what it means. And as recently as, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, when I was talking about this topic in a room of medical school graduates, only one person raised their hand, and that was my fellow. Not everybody's heard of it. Everybody's talked about it. Very few people actually know what it means. It means generative pre-trained transformer, and we'll go into these terms so we level set for everybody. And then the question that follows is, okay, if you got to GPT, what is a transformer? And nobody raised their hands. And the related question is, what is a neural network? And we'll talk about that. So how did we get here? Well, the story goes back nearly 80 years. People started working on computers, and the idea of an imminent nervous activity simulated by machines, that's the 1940s. Alan Turing, author of the Turing test, topic of some interesting movies, started thinking about, what would it take for a machine to be deemed intelligent. Arthur Samuel was the first person to teach a computer to play checkers in 1950s, so it's been a long time. And then finally, the term AI was coined in 1956 by John McCarthy. So the word AI and the term AI, was literally has an origin story the same way the word robotics does. Robotics first showed up in a Czech play in 1920 called Rossum's Universal Robots, and then the term robotics was coined by um, uh, Arthur C. Clarke. Two massive breakthroughs that have come in the recent years that has got this uh, whole topic moving. People have been working on AI for a while, is neural networks and transformers. So let's dive into that. What is a neural network? So think about 2012, not that long ago. I want you to keep this name in your mind. Geoffrey Hinton and two of his students at the University of Toronto built the first neural network. This name, Geoffrey Hinton, is going to show up again, and you should be on the lookout for it when you read about AI. It was a machine learning program that makes decisions similar to a human brain. These are the layers of a neural network. They work together to identify a phenomenon. You can set the weights, and you can weigh options and arrive at conclusions. Doesn't really tell us that much. Transformers is a much more interesting story. No, it's not these guys. It's more complicated than that. It's these guys. These 8 people changed the world. You rarely get to meet people that change the world, hopefully in a positive way. And these 8 people wrote a paper called Attention is All You Need. And they all, if you can see my screen and look very carefully, they essentially all work at Google at the time. All worked at Google, except for this guy at the University of Toronto, who's probably in Geoffrey Hinton's lab. And they presented their paper in Long Beach, California. And for those of you that follow Impact Factor for your academic promotion, this article, at the time I made this slide, had an impact factor, just the article, of 60,000. Now, a good journal, Surgical Endoscopy, SAGES, has an impact factor of 3 or 4. Maybe the New England Journal is up there 8, 9, or 10. This article has been cited more than 60,000 times. Put that on your CV. So these transformers that they talk about is what the neural networks pay attention to. It converts input sequences into an output sequence, and we'll go into greater detail. It's different from other neural networks that have been around because we can train this. The other neural networks can't be trained. They have to learn from scratch. So you can train it on words, text, video, audio, and not necessarily just word by word. It's the attention. Remember, the article was called Attention is All You Need. It's the attention based on the weights of each word that you type in relationship to all the other words in the sentence or document. And what comes out, and I'll just sort of highlight here from here to here, it's the word with the highest probability is then shows up on your screen. So if you think about using, Claude, which is my current personal favorite, the outputs are generated word by word. You can't see it because it's fast. So in other words, it's a prediction machine. It just predicts what the next word should be. It looks like magic. It's a word by word prediction machine. Now, if you think about GPT or Claude, any of these generative pre-trained transformers, one of the interesting things to understand the difference between an AI and a computer is if you ask a question to a computer program, you will always get the same answer every time, assuming it's not glitching. If you do it to a GPT, you may not get the same answer 2 times in a row. So think about that. Computers, same answer. AI is not necessarily the same answer. So why? Why isn't Google the biggest name in AI today? They owned it. They had it. They could be ruling the AI world. And yes, they have an AI, but they are not ruling the AI world by anybody's stretch of imagination. Similarly, if you think about these big why questions, why isn't Kodak the biggest name in digital camera and televisions? Kodak invented the digital camera and Kodak invented the OLED television. Why aren't they the biggest name? Why did Blockbuster declare bankruptcy right after its biggest year ever? And the answer is leadership. And the answer is fixation in old business models. Google's was making money in the ad business. And the leaders at the time didn't recognize the golden egg that they had found themselves with. Kodak was deeply invested in the film business, and Blockbuster was deeply rooted in the bricks and mortars. And when Netflix came and disrupted the technology, Blockbuster was literally done within a year. So think about those things. It's often about leadership. And leadership is really going to be the theme of this talk as we move towards the end. So let's think about unintended consequences of all this amazing technology. We'll start with Oppenheimer. Here's the actor. Here's the real guy. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, it's a pretty interesting movie. It's worth a read if you want to think about technology and leadership and consequences. And if you remember the movie, there's a little clip where Einstein looks to Oppenheimer and said, "It's now your turn to deal with the consequences of your achievement, the consequences of our achievements." And here he is pondering, but did he think about atom bombs and this stuff? No, technologists build technology. And then he thought later, just before they uh, ignited the first bomb, he admits, we thought we might start a chain reaction that would destroy the entire world. Now, hopefully none of us will ever be in a position where any decision we make might start a chain reaction to destroy the entire world. And I'm not speaking politically, but they went ahead and did it anyway. Pretty mind-boggling if you think about it. He estimated that 20,000 people would die from the atomic bomb. He's a scientist. That was his guess. And that would be acceptable casualties in a World War scenario. He didn't foresee this. Flattened cities, destroyed Hiroshima, Nagasaki. And despite the fact that his team built it, he completely lost providence. He didn't decide who's going to drop the bomb. He built it and somebody said, "Thank you very much. I'm going to decide what to do with it." Pretty frightening. More than 200,000 people would die from the bombs and the consequences of radiology. And the aftermath of the bomb were completely non-considered by those people building it. They had a technology project and they went forward. So we can create these technologies, and AI is a technology. Can we create the wisdom to use them safely? And remember, my perch is I'm not anti-AI. Do we have the wisdom to use the things that we create safely? And I want you to remember that quip from Oppenheimer, that what he said as destroyer of worlds. We're going to see that again. Clearly, the inventors, those 8 that figured out transformers, lose providence over their creations. The people who created the transformer paper are nowhere to be found in the leadership decision-making of AI in the world. So what else did Oppenheimer not foresee? He didn't foresee nuclear Armageddon. He didn't see fallout shelters and rows of children sitting under their desks. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember air raid drills where we would all be under our desks. It seems kind of foolish now that, I don't think the desk is going to protect us if a, bomb is dropped in our region. But that's where we were. He didn't foresee any of that. They just had tunnel vision and built technology. Let's go on to the next technology, the internet and the web. This is Vint Cerf and the ARPANET team. who are the joke in America is Al Gore did not invent the internet. But this guy took the internet that he did not invent and brought it to a new level. This is Sir Tim Berners-Lee. He invented the HTML markup language that gave the network something to do. The network is the hardware. Tim Berners-Lee created the software. Moving forward, once we had these tools, it wasn't Facebook, it was the Facebook in 2004. A little pimply faced Mark Zuckerberg, and finally brought it to an IPO worth 16 billion. Now it's worth over a trillion. So it's been one of the more consequential startups in American history. This is what the dream was. I had teenagers that were, 10, 11, 12, right when Facebook came out. And this is what you think of, meeting your friends. It was invented at Harvard. But this is what the reality also is: shaming, body shaming, exclusions. I don't think this guy thought about this person. It's a consequence, unintended consequence. We love our phones. We love our internet. We're all doom scrolling. I don't know about you, but I'm certainly doom scrolling occasionally. We get TikTok, and then we find that the TikTok is intentionally created so that our children can be addicted to this app in under an hour. And now we have Tim Berners-Lee coming back saying the person who invented the technology that made the web possible, and I'm not saying somebody else wouldn't have done it if not him. His quote is, it's completely separate from Oppenheimer. He envisioned that his invention could, in the wrong hands, become the destroyer of worlds. That certainly wasn't the intent. Ever wonder who's listening? I've certainly had this experience. Hey, our coffee's not that great. And, somebody says, well, maybe we should get a new coffee pot. And the next thing you know on your clickbait is you're getting ads for coffee. It's uncanny. And I don't know about you, but it certainly creeps me out. So we pay for the infrastructure. We pay for the networks. We pay for the computers. We pay for the televisions. But we often think of the web like running water and want it to be free. Certainly in most democratic countries, we just think of it as almost like a human right. Tighter regulations, business people argue, would make the internet more expensive. And people like Tristan Harris for the Center for Humane Technology understand, if you have it for free, if you are not buying the product, then guess what? You are the product. And think about it. If you think about it, you'll understand he's right. But it's not new. Television, remember, the television is the infrastructure. You paid for it. The network was free. I don't know if anybody knows what these are. These are rabbit ears. Television came through the airways. The programming was free after you paid for the hardware. And here's our little boy watching his cowboy show, and look at all the things that his parents have bought for him. We are the product. It's been written about over and over that television was free to bring eyes to the advertising. Do you remember life before email? Some of you may not be old enough, but I certainly do. We were super excited. You've got mail. There's a great Tom Hanks movie about this. We're super excited. However, when you think about it, email has consumed our lives. In 2024 alone, 9.5 billion daily emails just in the US, 347 billion emails worldwide, and 99% of us check our email daily. We have been consumed. This is what my life looked like. But what did we expect? We would open an email, and did we expect this? Email is an amazing technology. There have been unintended consequences. Here's the data. The Melissa virus was first deployed in 1999 using social engineering. It was in an infected Word attachment, and Melissa would send itself to 50 people in your address book. The I love you virus worm was deployed in 2000, disguised as a love letter, infected 45 million people. A lot of people looking for love in all the wrong places. Millions of dollars in damages, shut down email services, and companies like Microsoft and Ford and places like that. First, so think of the timeline. First email, 1965. First spam, 1978. First virus, 1999. It doesn't take that long. Could it get worse? Well, think about FaceTime. Here's grandma. Sounds amazing. Remember, we were FaceTiming and Skyping and doing these things. Fabulous. And think about uses that some people have used FaceTime today where they are streaming violence in our schools. And now we're full circle. Our children, I don't know what they call it where you are. We call it silver, code silver. Our children are back under the desks, potential destroyers of worlds. What about AI in our cars? I love, the experience I had in a self-driving car. I was in San Francisco, one of the first cities. Couldn't wait to get in it. I had downloaded the app, and
Whoa.
we think about these amazing self-driving cars. They say that it's safe, it meets the standards. Maybe it needs a little bit more work. Driverless cars hit pedestrian. We hear about this probably every month in the US. And
2 weeks ago, after he was woken up around 4 a.m.
Then it happened
they
again.
get out of control and they're
and
honking
again.
away.
And I started thinking, well, this is an issue.
Why did
I'm going to do one thing. Elliot, can you hear my sound or not?
Yes, we can. Yep.
Great. So what about AI in healthcare? I think there's amazing work being done. Image analysis, if there's medical students and you're thinking about a career in diagnostic radiology, I put a lot more thought into that. I think that there will be much fewer radiologists. Maybe that's why everybody's going into IR. The ability to guide our operations and recognize where we are and understand that we're doing a sleeve and we're in this portion of the operation. The image analysis is going to be amazing. Reads for pathologists. I don't think we're going to need nearly as many pathologists. They'll be providing oversight. The medical diagnosis is really pretty interesting. The first lawsuit in America just came out suing a big company for the diagnostic advice that it gives. We see some of this in our watches, the ability to diagnose heart rhythms. This is all stuff that you see all the time. Perhaps the most interesting thing is the ability to digest the world's medical literature. And certainly, open evidence has caught on and is used by the vast majority of professionals, certainly here in the United States. I'm sure many people are using it. It's a very contained AI. It doesn't scrape the internet. It just fixates on the literature. My guess is it may have just a devastating impact on more standard sources like UpToDate, Dynamed, unless they change. I was in a conversation with the folks at Doximity. They have their own literature analysis tool. I don't think that many people know about it. Certainly everybody's heard of open evidence. The precision therapeutics of doing the type of a genetic analysis. I mean, these are the promises. This is the stuff that's going to be amazing, truly amazing. So what should the focus be? For my money, I would like this to focus on improved diagnostics, more image analytics. I think the literature analysis is really helpful. The precision therapeutics, predicting risk, we see this in the ACS risk calculator. But what I want to focus on here is how to improve provider and healthcare worker quality of life. Now, notice I didn't put how to make more money as where we should be making our focus. I did not include that on the list intentionally. When we think about the opportunities for AI to improve the quality of life, burnout in America is a real thing. physician burnout, provider burnout, nursing burnout. Medical students tell us that they're burned out. We should be using these tools with a focus to improve the quality of our life. There is money in that because burnout prevents suicide, it improves retention, but those are soft dollars compared to products. There are 300 to 400 physician suicides in the US every year, higher in male physicians compared to the general population. But look at the data for women. Female physician suicide is a real problem in the United States. So we've got tools that I think are worth investing in. Our practice was the first practice in Western New York to invest in ambient listening, before Epic showed up. And there's two big companies. I don't have any conflicts for either one. Abridge, which is run by a fellow named Shiv Rao. He's a vascular medicine doctor. He's got a lot of big customers like Hopkins. And then the other one is DAX. And for those of you who know who this guy is, he's an ophthalmologist, and he's really one of the funnier people in the world. I'm going to play a little clip from him.
Excuse me. Oh, hi, family medicine. Would you like a compress? Jonathan makes them piping hot. Is this your work day? Yes. When do you take your spa break? Huh. Okay.
That's what I look like on most
Well, I
days.
was wondering if I could borrow Jonathan for a bit. I'm backed up on charting. Well, he's busy right now, but can I interest you in the DAX Copilot by Nuance? What is that? It's AI-powered ambient technology that helps you document patient encounters in real time. Really? Yes, it reduces administrative burden and lets you focus on your patients. But this is health data. What about security, privacy?
I'll stop the ad part of it. And again, I don't have any conflicts. So we were the first group in Western New York to do this, and our practice lives on its own bottom line. We invested in it in the first year as a pilot, and then the members voted because, in point of fact, for taking history and for organizing the notes, people who were paying for it out of their own pockets felt that it brought value. Ambient AI will be worked into Epic and Cerner and all these other EMRs. But when you're out on the bleeding edge, you only want to pay for things that matter. And I think that ambient listening has helped people get their charts done sooner. So this is the kind of investments that I believe we should be making. AI can make our lives easier. If for anybody who's ever done the call schedule, this becomes a 30-second task instead of an all-night task. It can change it. What you put in is, tantamount to what you get out. The better you are at prompting, and you can take entire courses on better prompting now, that you can make your life much more easier. It can automate, your outcomes, and you can look at this as the analysis. This might be from an Israeli company, I think. And the sales pitch, having been on the other end of the sales pitch, is surgeons want feedback. Surgeons are competitive. We want cases to move faster, and it's more efficient throughput. So that's the pitch. That's the dream. So what's the other side? Here's the other side. The question is, are the assumptions correct? I'd ask the attending surgeons, do you really want feedback on every case? My personal answer is, not as much as you think. And efficiency, is that a good thing? But is efficiency the only thing that matters as we care for our patients? So do surgeons really want to track their case times against their peers? I don't really think so. I think surgeons want to do the best operation they can, and some people are faster and some people are slower. And there are some opportunities to improve. I think coaching has a value. But if we become a slave to the spreadsheets, there will be unintended consequences. Is speed really a metric in the operating room? Here's a non-surgeon telling this surgeon that he might be slower than his peers. We measure speed because we can. Are we really interested in reviewing case video on a routine basis? Well, there's some interesting cases or not. I know that there's a hospital in Haifa that's using the system. They record everything. It's problematic in the US because of the malpractice bar. It's very problematic in the state of New York because our M&Ms have been pierced by the plaintiff's bar. So these videos, while potentially really helpful, are also potentially dangerous to people's lives and careers. And who really wants the data? Does he want the data, or does the non-combatant hospital administrator want the data? And what will be done with this information? So we all want to measure quality. I'm a big NISQIP fan. I think measuring quality is really important. We're in TQIP, we're in NISQIP, we're in VQI. It's really important, but this data should be managed by surgeons. That's the message. So who acts on the data? Here we are back in the office. AI says you're slow, but my patients do great. How can we understand what to do with this data? When somebody presents us a research study, we can read the paper, we can study the methodology, we can find the flaws. But remember, you don't get the same answer twice when you do it through AI analytics. We can critique the methods. We understand how a computer program works. We can debug them. We do not know how an AI neural net derives its insights. Even the people that create these, once the black box gets turned on, it trains itself on the inside. How do we know when they're hallucinating? How do we know the answers are real? Because you may not get the same answer every time. And are we really ready to turn over human insight and decision-making to something that we don't understand, at least not yet? So let's give examples of where the data sets you free and where the data makes mistakes. Everybody's heard of the Michigan Bariatric Collaborative, 2013, John Berkmeyer, great researcher, did a peer review of Roux-en-Y gastric bypass, video peer review. He demonstrated that technical skills varied widely. This is not AI. Greater skills was associated with less acute problems, reoperation, and readmission. Set the world on fire. 3 years later, one of his collaborators, Justin Dimick, chair in Michigan, he's on the right, and a fellow who became famous that nobody's ever heard of since, studied that same group a year later. Surgical skill did not affect weight loss, comorbidity resolution, and long-term outcomes were less dependent on surgeon skill than other factors that drive outcomes. So this is a typical, you read the headline in the paper and the retractions on page 3. We have to be careful with what we do with our data. I think Einstein says it best. Not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted actually counts. And we measure the things we can. And this is an early version. I noted that ChatGPT, all these images are from ChatGPT, and DALL-E doesn't sort very well, doesn't spell very well. So it's not the what, it's the who. The 5 largest companies in the world have a $7 trillion cap at the time of this writing, and it's these guys. I'm not sure I want any of these guys in charge of my life. I wouldn't trust any of them, and Steve Jobs, rest in peace. But the remainders, I wouldn't let any of these people decide what should be done in my life, my country. They're not trustworthy. They're just not, and you can record me on that. They are there to run their companies, and they've been incredibly successful. Interestingly, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act says that Facebook and Twitter and all, now X, can't be held responsible for the content of users' posts on their platform. So not only do they make billions and trillions, but they're not even responsible for what their products do. First Amendment rights do not apply. Europe has taken a much tougher stand. The Digital Services Act requires companies to do the risk management, conduct external and independent auditing, and they hold these companies accountable. which is why there have been many successful lawsuits out of Europe, throttling down some of the content from these companies. So we're back to Geoffrey Hinton, the dangers of AI. This is from Geoffrey Hinton, the person that invented the neural net. Job loss, deep fakes. UB does a lot of research in deep fakes. One of the world's experts is a fellow named CYU at UBA. Privacy violations, increased socioeconomic inequity, market volatility, weapons automation, false information generation, and algorithmic bias based on bad data. And we've seen a lot of that depending on the source of data. The classic one in the US is many studies did not include African Americans, and therefore the AIs and the humans come to inaccurate conclusions as to what some of the outcomes mean. So here's the classic. This is from a paper. Is metformin use associated with the reduced risk of total knee replacement among patients with type 2 diabetes? The answer was yes, there is some research. Do you have some references? And yes, here are the references. This is fascinating. This generated a paper, Learning to Fake It. All the titles seemed appropriate. 95% contained authors that did previous work in this area. 18 real references, 41 references were fabricated. We repeated this in our lab doing MIS research. We did a poster at Sages where, depending on how you do the prompt, you get different references and different percentages of fake references. So if you start your prompt and say, listen, I really need a bunch of references that show that robotic chole is better than lap chole, it will generate references for you, some of which are fake. If you then turn around and go, listen, I need a whole bunch of papers saying that lap chole is better, you will get a different set of fabricated references. This is really dangerous. And if you're looking for the ground truth answer, there are several publications in the United States saying that for bile duct injury, lap chole is slightly superior at this time in real references. 49 out of the 50 references were fabricated, but they were, cited known journals. It's an amazing. If you think about why the AI does this, and if you ask it, if you've ever been pissed off at your answer, you go, why did you do that? The AI is a pleaser. It's trying to make you happy. Who should we believe? This is from Walter Porres. Bariatric surgeons know Walter Porres well. He's a cartoonist. He's a fabulously nice guy. Okay, here it is, talking to the patient. Alexa says you have malaria. Siri thinks you have worms. And ChatGPT says you have Rocky Mountain spotted fever. We have to use these technologies as partners in a thoughtful fashion. We cannot turn our brains over to them. So why does this happen? Well, first of all, we're not completely sure. It can digest a large set of text, but remember, it's a statistical probability, and you can change the answers, the temperatures of the AI, depending on what you value. The bots will tell you when they send you a porky pie, and they will apologize to you. And the output is a guess, is always a guess, based on an algorithm designed to produce the most plausible answer. My son Corey works on AI training, and he spent some time on the red team trying to break AIs. There are reliable ways to get answers that you're looking for, even though in theory, these answers should not be available. There is no truth detection, but I think this will change. So here's a fun one. You can't replicate this, but this is from my phone. Who did the first backflip? And this is Gemini. It's difficult to trace. And one of the answers was John Backflip, Olga Corbett, some of these other answers. So, you look at this and you go, really, what's your source? Yeah, it's like, huh? So here's the source.
All started in medieval Europe with a man named John Backflip. He was the first person to ever do a flip, and he first performed the stunt in 1316. People came from all around Europe to see this, until his nemesis, William Frontflip, led a revolution to convince the public that John was using witchcraft for his stunt. So he was tragically exiled and never seen again.
And you go, how did this happen? It's because the AIs scrape this AI scrapes the internet, and somebody created a gag video, and the AI scraped it and presented it as ground truth. Now, if you go to another AI, you get a more logical answer. But this is the point. If we flood the internet with false information, and there's plenty of it out there from different groups with different, personal and political and social points of view, and AI is scraping the internet for answers, we can change what we present to the public. There's another thing as we get to the end. Looks familiar? Ransomware. If you've ever been part of a ransomware attack, one of our hospitals was shut down for 3 months. We were back on paper. It teaches you how dependent we are on computer systems. So finally, what can we expect next? I think we're going to see a lot of fascinating video. This is Sora. And it's interesting to think that I don't know if it's out in Israel, but the Odyssey has hit the movie theaters. The Odyssey has almost no AI in it. And it spurred the ire of Elon Musk, who said he could make a movie in a short period of time using AI that would be more accurate. But it's been interesting because a lot of these super AI generated effects are not doing as well in the movie theaters as people think. There may be a return that what people want to really see is the creation of art. So I think we're in for some interesting times ahead. Certainly have amazing technology. A lot of people have been hearing about chips politically in the US. The world sort of went aghast when DeepSeek from China hit the stage. NVIDIA stock plummeted. And then it was downloaded. And then we go, do we really want to load a Chinese AI into our American computers? And a lot of word came out. And now you do this. Now, don't worry about NVIDIA, for those of you who are investors, because this is the dip, went down under 100. And now it's back, sitting around 200. But these are very volatile. All it takes is one new AI model that seems to be transformative, and, we become, moving targets in the stock market. So what are the opportunities for us as we close? We need to be at the table. We should not be AI deniers. We should not bury our head in the sand. We should not refuse to use AI. We need, as clinicians, to be at the table deciding how AI is used, what is it used for, who will get the data, what will we use the data for? Because if we are not at the table, then we are likely to be on the menu, particularly in the US, where the corporatization of medicine is becoming manifest, and we become on the menu, and everybody else will decide our fate for us. So I encourage all of you to learn everything you can about AI. I encourage you to be a proficient AI user, to have it be your partner in tasks that can be made easier, but also so that you can understand the limitations so that you do not wind up on the menu. These are my image credits. I generated a lot of them. These are from other papers and places that I scraped them up. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Steve. Very interesting. Any questions?
I have questions. So what is your prognosis, next 50 years? What do you think will happen in medicine and particularly in surgery? The role of artificial intelligence in our daily work. Can we say after 50 years, can we say to our residents, according on my personal experience, I have to go and operate this patient and do appendectomy, or I have to say, according on ChatGPT, I have to go and operate my patient?
Well, that's the danger. I think you've asked the right question. I had a very frustrating thing. I actually had to take one of my patients back to the operating room um, for one of those strange things that happens. And we went to the operating room without a CAT scan, without any imaging. We examined the patient. We go, we need to go back and take a look. That's called judgment. And what I fear, and I don't know if any of you have been on, there's a new physician platform called Brune. I posted recently, not so much about the dangers of AI, but it goes way further back. If you want to read on this topic to get to your question, then I'll prognosticate. The great thing about being a futurist is that most of us are wrong. But the if you read, it goes back in 2010. Nicholas Carr wrote an amazing book called "The Internet: What the Internet is Doing to Our Brain." If you haven't read it and you are interested philosophically in these topics, that's where you start because it's not just AI. The struggle, the real learning is in the struggle. When you hand things in a snippet, in a TikTok, in a phone, and I'm a journal editor for innovative technologies as Sage has launched a second journal, and I'm preparing to have it digestible on a phone. The learning is in the struggle, but much more important, when they studied the brain images of cab drivers in London, getting back to the UK, Elliot, they actually demonstrated that pre and post GPS, the brain structure changes. It's not the same. So the brain is plastic. We can learn at any age. And that when you no longer have to struggle, like the cabbies had to learn the roads. So fast forward to something more modern, Daniel Epstein's book, Range. Range is a fascinating book, another book with a lot of great material. And the book is entitled Why Generalists Triumph in a World Full of Specialists, because they bring a broad range of activities that applies to surgery. I am a general surgeon. I can do a colon, a stomach, an incarcerated paraesophageal hernia, a thyroid, a parathyroid, a gallbladder, a common bile duct exploration, etc. But he really emphasizes, and the trainees, they don't want to hear this. They want to open the phone. They want to have Chat GPT give them or all of us the answer. It's incredibly seductive. But the real learning comes in the struggle. I fear we will stop struggling and that we will have a world where we'll put it all in and we'll wait for the answer to have somebody tell us what to do. That's phase one. So if you say, is that there was a funny movie called named Wall-E, where we stopped struggling and we became fat, dumb, and happy sitting in our chairs. And I am personally on record that one of the stupidest operations on the planet is a robotic appendectomy.
I
I'm not
agree
saying
with you.
robotics is bad. I build robots, but from an economic point of view, robotic appendectomy is just terrible. But the administrators like it because they think that they're getting swag for doing more and more robotic cases, and large robotic companies stroke them and say, "Yeah, you're doing more cases. Let's get you another robot." But from an economic point of view, operations like that are stupid. Now, fast forward, diverging pathways. If you think about, first world countries with high technology, Israel, the US, parts of Europe, that's the market. But what about the rest of the world? There are emerging markets in Latin America, sub-Saharan African, billions of people where they simply cannot afford this level of technology to do an operation with the same long-term outcomes.
Well, maybe that would shift the whole fellowship in 20 years to Africa. USA graduates would go to Africa because we're de-skilled our residents in doing open procedures and stopping bleedings and doing basic surgical techniques that we are doing now.
Same page. So Lee Swanstrom and Adrian Park and I just wrote an article about why we should not give up on laparoscopy, because the rest of the world is going to be doing laparoscopy. So I've been doing a bunch of predictive analytics about when robotic chole will overtake lap chole in the US. It's about 10 or 15, 20 years. It never catches up even through 2060 in the rest of the world. And I agree with you. The running joke was we're going to have to go to Africa to learn how to do laparoscopy. But more important, you know, from a cost effective point of view, it all depends on how the economy goes. If right now, sadly, we're not very price sensitive in the hospitals. If we were price sensitive, we would not allow a robotic appendectomy. However, that said, there's going to be a 300,000 person physician shortage in the United States. And so I see futures like telerobotics. So a robotic appendectomy is not the stupidest operation in the world if the surgeon's 50 miles away, because there is no surgeon where you need to perform the appendectomy. The more price sensitive you are, the more you use these technologies where they do best. A DV5 is a $2.5 million sewing machine. So if you believe that you need to hand sew the colorectal anastomosis because you have better outcomes because you didn't exteriorize anything and can prove it, then by all means, I think it's great for ventral hernias. But I don't need a robot to do a lap chole. I just don't. And in fact, I like my glass laparoscope better because I can spin it around and get all the views. So I think that we will see more robotics. We will see more telerobotics. We'll see some autonomous surgery. Peter Kim, when he was at the National Children's Medical Center, there's papers written about the STAR robot, and I went to go see it because the VC asked me to go have a look. And he was doing autonomous suturing, his and his team that had people from Hopkins. And I got more interested in the machine vision because building another robot is a $500 million, thing. But you saw, a research team at Hopkins was able to do a lap chole in a pig. And so we'll see more autonomy in the future. Hard to do autonomy in a gunshot wound to the abdomen. A pig chole is a very specified thing, but everything you think is crazy might be doable in the future. And a lot of this will depend on what we allow for our profession. And the concept of liability, accountability, and responsibility gets distributed to a machine when we go, hey, I didn't operate because ChatGPT told me not to. Not my fault. It's that same question as when an autonomous car hits a child on the side of the street. Who's responsible? Well, with cars, it's easy. The person who made the car is responsible. Much more complicated in medicine. So I hope that will answer your question, that we will give up some agency. We will see much more telerobotics. And I think we will figure out ways, the way the orthopedic surgeons are, to automate certain tasks robotically. I think we'll see that. And there will be good things. If you ask the surgeons, does the Mako cut a better knee for the cuts than by hand? The answer will be usually. It doesn't handle the edge cases very well. So you need judgment. If we take all that judgment away, who's going to do that in 10 years? There are only 3 of us that can do a common bile duct exploration in our hospital. And we're the 3 old guys, as a for instance.
Another point, we don't know yet the ability of artificial intelligence to do validation of database. What way they are doing validation? Because if you are giving proper information to artificial intelligence, maybe one day we don't need to do CT scan for appendicitis. You know what I mean? Because
I don't think we need artificial intelligence to do less CT scans for appendicitis. We need clinical judgment in people who have learned
absolutely, yeah,
to judge. There is a place for some CAT scans, but if you see an 18-year-old male person with my favorite book in the world, I wrote an article on the history of copes. They're not going to publish it anymore, and following PATFL. And you take an 18-year-old, at the very least, they need a diagnostic laparoscopy if you've taken a good history. And yet I can't get a resident to call an attending for an appendectomy without a CAT scan, unless I'm on call, because my rule is no CAT scans until you examine the patient. And when you do that, you actually make healthcare much more efficient. Now, why does this happen in the United States? The CAT scan is like a cash machine. If we really, really got to your question really is about value-based medicine. What do we value? Maybe the AI will make people a little bit more confident to make a decision without a CAT scan. But if you flip the healthcare system on its head and say, we're not reimbursing you for that CAT scan, we're just going to give you a pot of money. How you spend it is up to you. Then we're going to go and reward the doctors that go, oh, thank you for doing half as many CAT scans as Elliot, for instance. That we're all products.
But if you think about it, you need if you do a CT scan for every patient, every patient that goes a CAT scan, you don't need a doctor. So you're saving millions of millions on doctors and doctors' education because you have the CAT scan and then the robot and then the diagnostic, whatever scheme checklist that they will make. So just make a CAT scan for everyone, take a blood test for everyone, and you don't need a doctor.
Maybe.
Makes sense. Yeah.
That's the argument of the people like, Elon Musk. We know
Sure.
it doesn't work. We know we can't afford it in most places in the world. And we were a long ways from proving that that's a better system. Because just remember,
not.
once you get rid of all the doctors, the people that make the hardware, what are they going to do?
Sure. Yeah.
Nothing gets cheaper. Everything becomes more expensive. And the other piece to this is because I was not a big CAT scan doer because wanted to teach residents. If you come into my hospital at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I happen to be on call and I'm not doing anything, I'll see you at 2 o'clock. I'll make a decision. I could have you in the operating room by 3 o'clock, and you could be in the PACU by 4 o'clock, and you could be home by 6 o'clock. I have many, many days you can't get the CAT scan by 6 o'clock. So this healthcare economics is a big time complex task. Certainly in countries like the US where there's a high variability of payers.
Yeah.
I used to go, when I was the network executive in Cambridge, I walked up to the CFO and I said, hey, I did an appendectomy today without a CAT scan. And she looked at me like, I'm some sort of moron. And she said, well, that's nice. I said, no, you misunderstand. Because did I save the hospital money or did I cost us potential reimbursement? And she looked at me and says, well, I don't know. I said, well, then how are we supposed to decide? You're the CFO. If you go to countries like Canada, which have been held up by many Americans as what we should be striving for, they are 300,000 people on their surgery waiting list right now.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say the American healthcare system is perfect in all ways. There are a lot of problems, but there's problems everywhere. There's problems in the Canadian system with long wait times for non-emergent surgery. They do a great job with cancer. But if you need your thyroid out for Graves' disease, patients come to me across the border because the wait could be 2 years. So so this issue around technology versus available capital, if we were to have real economic depression, robotics would become less, not more. It would be, and who can predict that kind of that future? I think the real thing is that we should be training our trainees to learn good judgment, and then they will help figure out the future. When do you use this tool versus that tool? What are the economic considerations? And I can tell you from my own personal experience, when I'm in the hospital, I do a robotic hernia. I'm past the point where I'm caring whether the hospital loses money because I've explained this to them a million times. On the reimbursements for a minimally invasive robotic hernia is not very great. We built our own ASC where the physicians are owners. All the incentives have flipped. We care very much about how much something costs, and we become the partners in bending the cost curve because we are now self-interested. As hospitals become more corporate, there will be more employees and less autonomous surgeons. That trend has been going on for 15 years in the US. It's interesting times. I hope that answers your question.
But it's dangerous, right? Like what's going on? It's looking forward in 10 years. I don't know if anyone is doing anything about it. Like your Secretary of Health doesn't seem to be occupied with managing AI or any danger of AI very soon. Nobody is slowing this down. I don't know if the general surgeon of the U.S. is doing anything, and the U.S. is the leading country in everything, in everything. Like you're setting the model for everyone. And
So some of this falls on the College of Surgeons. So there's a new, Being Sages has an AI committee, but it's really the college is the big umbrella society for surgery in America. I just received an invitation to the college's AI committee for the group of master educators in surgery and how we should think about using AI, and we need ownership. But you're right. Right now, the impact of money in politics is profound in the United States.
Everywhere.
Understanding that I'm being recorded, I think that's still a fair statement. So,
Do you think as surgeons we're relatively protected our jobs from AI more than, let's say, non-proceduralists? Because
yes,
if it can help diagnose, then there's less of a need for the diagnosticians.
yes, and the AI over enthusiasts will say, "Well, I'll be replaced by robots." That's a long time coming. Certainly, for a while. The hand surgery means handwork, so the handwork. The groups of people that are the most protected from AI are the plumbers and the
Yep.
electricians and the HVAC people. As I had a broken pipe and he charged me more than I get for an appendectomy to do 10 minutes of work. So, I mean, those are the realities. But I think you're right. The proceduralist, you know, it's very hard for a robot to do an incarcerated hernia, particularly with no haptic feedback. If you have to, the gentle haptic touch on the bowel and things like that. I think pathology will change and profoundly. Radiology will change profoundly. And I sit on investment committees. I think those are going to be good things. The ability of AI to look at image analysis. Human radiologists are only human, and I don't know about you, where somebody will have a CAT scan for an appendectomy. They'll be focused on that, and they'll come for some upper GI symptom, and you'll go, "Wow, you have half your stomach in your chest," because the readers are only human. We are all only human. And so AI will improve some of that. I believe that. That's the forte.
Right. Any
But
other
it's who
questions?
collects data on you. I
Mm.
mean, I have some, acquaintances that are not particularly speedy, but their outcomes are amazing. And their patients are extraordinarily happy. And that is very hard to measure. You can measure time, you can measure return to the OR, you can measure units of blood transfused because that's easy. We count it because it can be counted. Some of the equally important outcomes are much harder to measure, but no less important. And what will hospital administrators and non-surgeons do? They'll measure the outcomes they can measure. Can't blame them. I mean, when you're a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. So I think those are the things that we need to stand together and say, time is not the only variable, as a for instance.
Right.
Cost we can measure, and there's a lot of good work on cost. If you think about a lap hernia, I use plain flat polypropylene mesh, which is $40 in the US. Somebody uses ProGrip, makes them 3 minutes faster, but costs $400. Is 5 minutes worth saving $400? You bet you. And that's very hard work to do, but that's where we need to go.
Right. Any
Anybody
other
else have a
questions?
question? I got a Yulia and a Hala and a Khalid, Yuri. Super fun. Well, thank you. I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
being transported around the world. What time is
thank
it where you are?
thank you very much.
It's 7 hours ahead. It's now
Yeah, 7 hours.
4 o'clock.
So,
Correct.
absolute pleasure. And don't hesitate to write me if you have a question.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
thank you,
thank you very
everybody.
much.
Have a great rest of the summer.
Thanks.
We'll reconvene after the Chagim, I think.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take care.
Harry.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Bye-bye, everybody.